So I'm going to begin this afternoon by being very authentic and honest with you. I have practiced this 7 or 8 times, and each time it has been a different presentation. So I am just as curious as you as to how this is going to turn out in 10 minutes. I want to talk to you today about a very important subject that is very close to my heart. But before I begin, I want to ask you a question. I want you to think of a child or adolescent that you care for deeply. And if you had one wish, one desire for that child or adolescent, what would that be for their lifetime? And I think that if we are very honest about this wish, desire for them, it would have something to do with well-being. And I think we would answer with centeredness, being peaceful, feeling healthy, feeling successful, capable, worthy. And this is a concern today because as I walk through the public and charter schools of Indianapolis every week and township schools, I see something that is, it's a paradox, and I want to talk to you about that for a couple of minutes. In our country right now, between the ages of 8 and 17, 20% of our children and adolescents are experiencing chronic stress. And I am in the midst of education. We are in the most incredibly tenuous, contentious time here in Indiana and nationally. We're wanting to raise these science and language arts scores and math scores, and we need to. We need to be literate. But we also are subconsciously, and I think very unintentionally, neglecting these social and emotional needs of our students. I see this every day, and I want to add to you this afternoon, and our teachers, and our parents, and our school leaders. So I come to you today with a perspective that has 3 parts. And what does service look like? What do we talk about? What do we mean when we say service? About 5 years ago, when I was teaching an undergraduate class, it was a Monday evening before class, and I was scurrying around, and at that time, our oldest son was in high school, and our son, Andrew, was and is very ornery. And most of the calls from the high school were not real positive ones, I can tell you, and emails. So I'm getting ready for class, and I see, you've got mail pops in, and in the subject line it says, Andrew in action. And I'm thinking, this is not a good thing. Do I want to open this now, or do I want to do this later? So I opened it immediately, and in the body it said, Mrs. Desautels, I want you to know that Andrew has been working diligently today. He's been creative. He's been funny. I want you to know how well he did in class today. He was a freshman. It was a Spanish class. And then Mr. Pickett said, let me know how I may serve you in the days and weeks to come. And I thought to myself, this is incredible, because not only was it just a positive call or email home, but he really latched onto something that eventually, when I shared this with Andrew, changed the trajectory of his semester. And when this happened, he began to feel capable and successful. So I want to talk to you today about this, and you can see this photo. These are our adolescents, and when we think of the stress and the service, I want to tell you the good news. We are wired, neurobiologically, we are wired to thrive. And we are relational people. And I want to say this to you, that in the last 25 years, neuroscience and education have come together and are birthing something that is huge. Because we now know that everyday experiences change the brain structurally and functionally. And this is the best news for parents and for teachers. Because what we know is that stress shuts down this prefrontal cortex right here behind our eyebrows. And this is the seat of higher cognitive thinking. This is where we plan and make decisions and think creatively and critically, but we can't do that when we are feeling stressed. And that limbic system, which you heard of today, is ignited. And so many times our children are in this fight or flight response. And learning is about connections. And so when we think about learning and we think about our neurobiology, I want to tap into those innate geniuses and those passions and learning styles and profiles of our students. I was sitting at one of our inner city middle schools last week, and I watched an 8th grade young woman literally pull out a buffet for her lunch. It was 7 courses, and the teacher never saw anything. I was observing the classroom, and I cannot tell you the creativity, the innovative, and the higher thinking processes that I watched and saw her, and I watched her go through. So what I thought to myself is, how can we shift this? How can we create just a little bit of optimism, just a little bit of positivity? Because what we know is that emotion, positive emotion, broadens perspectives. It gives us clarity of thought. It enhances our long-term memory, and it strengthens our immune systems. We cannot afford not to create positive emotion in our classrooms. We can do this. I love this because if egg is broken by outside force, life ends. And if broken by inside force, life begins. I feel that many times as a system, as a culture, and individually, we come to problems from the outside in. We look at the solution quickly. We need the change. We need the shift. But when I think about what happens in a natural process, when I think about Walt, one of my graduate students who was working with children with emotional disabilities, and he was teaching a young woman in a language arts 8th grade class, and she was required to write a story. And in that story, she had written about Walt's demise at her hands, and she turned it into him. And Walt had a choice. He could confront her and talk about the consequences, or he had a moment, he had a choice where he could sit beside her, which is actually what assess means. The Latin root of assess means to sit beside. Walt approached her and sat down with her and talked about her writing and how fabulous it was. He said, "I'm not thrilled with the content, but you've got some great potential. Let's see what we can do together. How can I help you?" And so she eventually rewrote the story. We reworked it. She did great in Walt's class, left this transitional school, went to a public high school, emailed Walt later, and shared her successes on the newspaper and the yearbook clubs. I want to leave you today with something that has changed my life, and I have to say to you, our students are our greatest teachers. My 3 own children and the students that I have in the college and out in the schools are my greatest teachers. I am just humbled by them. I found something that was incredible, and I want to share this with you. The brain processes questions long after they've been asked. And when we ask a question, what do you need? How can I help? How can we work through this together? Something happens. Not only does the brain process the question longer, but defense mechanisms melt away. And perspectives shift. And I want you, this is in your deck, that you're in your bag. This was one of I can't remember what they called it, but this is incredible. When you are in the middle of a conflict and you have angst and there's frustration and you feel it building, I want you to do this with your friend, with your colleague, with your child, with your partner. I want you to stop and take a deep breath. And I want you to ask them, what do you need? How can we solve this? How can we work this out? And I want you then to do the second step. And that is, I want you to listen, to learn and understand, not to respond. Because, and you can ask everyone in my family and all my friends, I listen to respond. I posture for that next fabulous answer. But when we listen to understand and when we listen to learn, it's amazing what happens because we place ourselves in service to one another. Our perspectives broaden. The question activates a learning state of mind. There is an increase of our neurotransmitter dopamine, and incredible shifts take place. So I'm going to end, but I want to end with this thought. Not only do you ask, how may I serve you? But I want you to think about the power of envisioning and seeing what a child can't see just yet. And hold that for that child or adolescent in these tenuous times with educational reform. Thank you so much.